Well, let's keep looking then at some other aspects of this conflict. And three vessels have been struck today in the Strait of Hormuz, bringing the total to 14 since the conflict began. Iran's Revolutionary Guards warning that any ship passing through the narrow strait is a target.
The narrow waters of the Strait of Hormuz form one of the most strategically important maritime passages on Earth. Roughly a fifth of the world's traded oil passes through this corridor between Iran and Oman, linking the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the wider Arabian Sea. Every day, enormous oil tankers and cargo vessels move through shipping lanes only a few miles wide. When conflict reaches these waters, when ships are struck, damaged, or sunk, the consequences are not limited to geopolitics or global energy prices. Beneath the surface lies a fragile ecosystem that can suffer for decades. An oil tanker moving through the strait may carry between 1 and 2 million barrels of crude oil. That translates to roughly 40 to 80 million gallons of petroleum in a single vessel. Even if a ship is not destroyed outright, damage to a hull or storage tanks can release thousands or hundreds of thousands of barrels into the sea. And crude oil is only part of the equation. Large tankers and container ships also carry marine bunker fuel, a thick, tar-like fuel used for propulsion. A modern supertanker may hold 2 to 5 million gallons of bunker fuel, while large container ships may carry similar amounts. When vessels are struck or sink, these fuels often leak slowly for weeks or months. In a conflict scenario where multiple ships are damaged, the cumulative contamination can escalate quickly. One disabled tanker could release oil equivalent to several major historical spills. 2 or 3 incidents within a short time frame could blanket vast stretches of water with slicks that drift with currents and winds through the entire Persian Gulf basin. The environmental stakes become clearer when compared with past disasters. In 1989, the Exxon Valdez oil spill released roughly 11 million gallons of crude oil into the waters of Prince William Sound in Alaska. Even decades later, traces of oil remain in sediments and shorelines. Thousands of seabirds, sea otters, and fish died immediately, and the long-term ecological recovery took decades. Fisheries collapsed temporarily, and certain populations of wildlife have never fully recovered. Now imagine spills of similar magnitude occurring not once, but potentially multiple times in one of the most heavily trafficked shipping corridors on the planet. The ecosystems of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz are surprisingly rich, despite the region's extreme heat and salinity. Coral communities adapted to warmer waters than most reefs line portions of the seabed. These corals support reef fish, crustaceans, and mollusks that form the base of local fisheries. Oil slicks and dispersed hydrocarbons can smother coral polyps, block sunlight needed by symbiotic algae, and poison reef organisms. Fish species in the region include commercially important varieties such as groupers, snappers, kingfish, and tuna, along with smaller reef fish that maintain coral health. Oil contamination affects fish in several ways. Eggs and larvae, tiny and fragile, are extremely sensitive to petroleum toxins. Even small concentrations can deform developing fish or kill them outright. Adult fish exposed to hydrocarbons may suffer damaged gills, impaired reproduction, and contaminated flesh that makes them unsafe to eat. The damage does not stop at fish. Sea turtles, including hawks and green turtles that nest along nearby coasts, use these waters for feeding. Dolphins and whales occasionally pass through the region, including species adapted to the shallow Gulf environment. Oil floating on the surface coats the skin and respiratory openings of marine mammals and turtles when they surface for air. Then there are the seabirds, gulls, terns, cormorants, and migratory birds that travel along the Arabian coastline. Oil destroys the waterproofing of feathers, leading to hypothermia, drowning, or poisoning, as birds attempt to clean themselves. The geography of the Persian Gulf makes matters worse. Unlike the open ocean, the Gulf is relatively shallow and has limited water exchange with the Indian Ocean. Pollutants can linger for years. Oil that sinks or mixes with sediments may persist on the seabed long after surface slicks disappear. Beyond crude oil, container ships introduce another dimension of risk. A modern container vessel may carry thousands of shipping containers holding industrial chemicals, plastics, metals, electronics, fertilizers, and consumer goods. When such ships are damaged, containers can rupture or fall overboard. Their contents dissolve, leak, or break apart into debris. Plastics fragment into microplastics that enter the food chain, while chemicals may create localized toxic zones. Diesel spills from smaller ships and naval vessels also pose serious threats. Diesel spreads quickly across the water surface, exposing large areas of marine life to toxic compounds. If conflict in the Strait of Hormuz escalates and multiple ships are damaged or sunk, the cumulative environmental impact could dwarf many single-incident spills. Imagine several tankers losing portions of their cargo, perhaps tens of millions of gallons combined, while damaged container ships release chemicals and debris. Oil slicks could drift along hundreds of miles of coastline, from Iran to Oman and across the Arabian Gulf. Such contamination could devastate regional fisheries, damage coral habitats, and disrupt migratory species that depend on these waters. Recovery could take decades, especially if repeated incidents occur before ecosystems have time to heal. The world often evaluates conflict in terms of energy markets, shipping insurance, or military outcomes. The Strait of Hormuz is frequently discussed as a choke point for global oil supply and international trade. Yet beneath those economic calculations lies another ledger, one written in damaged reefs, poisoned fisheries, and wildlife struggling to survive in contaminated waters. The financial cost of disrupted shipping may be measured in billions of dollars, but the ecological cost, spreading through marine ecosystems and coastal communities over years or decades, may be far harder to measure and far longer lasting. And that is perhaps the quiet tragedy of environmental damage during wartime. Markets eventually stabilize, trade routes reopen, but ecosystems remember. Long after headlines about energy prices fade, the lingering oil in sediments, the diminished fish populations, and the damaged coral reefs may continue to bear witness to a conflict whose environmental consequences were rarely the focus of attention.